President Trump's first speech to Congress and the continuing efforts to shrink the federal government here in his second term. We're looking at some of the challenges for the Department of Government Efficiency and how DOGE has gained steam both in the state and in local municipalities. A look at the first 50 days back in office. Plus, the Players is this week. It's a lot more than a golf tournament and even has something you can participate in today. We're out at TPC Sawgrass with Executive Director Lee Smith on This Week in Jacksonville. Thanks for being with us today. The 51st Players Championship begins this week in Ponte Vedra, and there's a monumental economic impact to the region, along with a healthy dose of civic pride that comes along with a global broadcast reaching 220 countries, all of it shining a light on the entire region. I spoke about those things out on the golf course with Lee Smith, the Executive Director of the Players.
The turnout that Northeast Florida Surprise gives us is super supportive.
Yeah.
Friday and Saturday are our busiest days. So for those that want to come out Tuesday and Wednesday, Tuesday is our Military Appreciation Day and concert. Wednesday this year we have a new event, the Creator Classic, which is exposing YouTube creators to this golf course on Wednesday afternoon that really have a reach among golf fans and a younger audience. 2/3 of their fans are between the age of 18 to 34. So we expect a young and energetic crowd to come and follow those YouTube golfers like Fat Perez and the Bryan brothers and Grant Horvat, really popular influencers. And then we turn it to the real show on Thursday through Sunday, and certainly again, like always, expect a big turnout.
You said Friday, Saturday are the biggest turnouts, not Sunday, final round.
Yeah, I think there's some people like to stay home and watch it on TV.
Sure.
We Friday and Saturday.
You don't
really
miss any shots that way.
No. Friday and Saturday are always at most tournaments are always the busiest days.
Okay.
Certainly there are people. We have 70% of our spectators are visitors, and 60%, 6 out of 10, are from out of state. So sometimes Sunday's a travel day, but Sunday is a really cool day to come out. Trophy ceremony, and there's just nothing like the drama that Sunday provides at the Players Championship.
Sundays the last 2 years for the Players have included a guy named Scotty Scheffler. I mean, even we go back to the Super Bowl, and could there be a three-peat? What are the odds that Scotty Scheffler gives us a three-peat at the Players?
I'll tell you, he's certainly been trending the right way, and will play this week in Orlando at the Arnold Palmer Invitational, and certainly expect him to put on a good performance there. But just to think, last year, our 50th anniversary, we had never had a back-to-back champion in 50 years, and now in the 51st year, we have the opportunity to have a three-peat champion. We're excited for Scotty, but at the same time, I think going back to the drama that Sunday provides, last year, the reigning U.S. Open champion, the reigning British Open champion, and the reigning Olympic champion all had putts on 18 to tie Scotty, the number one player in the world. What more drama can Sunday provide than a leaderboard that's filled with that much talent, skill, and accomplishment?
Well, I think one of the things that comes to mind as you're talking through that, when you build that excitement, and there's also this element of maybe some education and bringing people along, because you talked about what's going on Wednesday with the content creators. This is really interesting. I see a lot of young volunteers out here too. I know a high schooler who's going to be on the course volunteering during the Players. College kids are also out here volunteering. I mean, there's a kind of a generational thing that's happening when it comes to tournament time for the Players.
Absolutely, and look, when the PGA Tour looks at our fan-forward surveys, we've had almost 50,000 respondees of golf fans that have, better than anything, have told us what they want. And these are the things they want. They want innovation. They want to see these content creators that they follow on social media to have access to the golf course. They want us to tell the stories of the players a little bit deeper. They want us to enhance the broadcast. So, those are things that we take seriously. And as you said here, the opportunity to extend the week of the players, starting with opening weekend. We're the third largest military community in the country. Yeah. So to have opening weekend and to have Tuesday where we celebrate our men and women in uniform, and have Wednesday that's a practice round, and to have 10 of the largest social media golf creators to come out here and play, and then Thursday through Sunday have 144 of the best players in the world. It's 9 days of action packed, and we build that again from feedback from the fans.
Yeah, I know you got an extensive golf background, even as a golfer and as a club pro. When it comes to the dollars and cents, though, this is a huge economic driver in our area. Tell us about the impact that the players makes in our region.
Yeah, thank you, Kent. It's really important to us. When Sunday at 6:00, we're going to crown a champion, and we're going to hand out a trophy, and we're going to hand out a lot of money. Yeah. To that player.
How large is the purse compared to other tournaments on the PGA Tour?
This year is a $25 million purse, so wow. The largest prize in golf. But what we take from that is the impact that tournament has. Again, going from inside the ropes to outside the ropes, and outside the ropes, we take that obligation very seriously. And we focus on three areas, and one area is the global awareness engine that this tournament provides, and that's 50 million hours of this broadcast is consumed worldwide, 28 different languages, 220 different countries and territories. This year we'll have 15 different international broadcast partners on site here to televise the Players' Championship back to their country and their constituents. What better commercial for Northeast Florida, right. Duval County, St. Johns County, than 50 million hours globally consumed? So global awareness platform. Little more locally, the economic impact instrument that you speak of. Last year, the tournament had an economic impact of $234 million here on the local community. The PGA Tour and our global home building has an economic impact of almost $1 billion throughout the year here in Northeast Florida. We break that down in that the hotels, we have about 18,000, 19,000 hotel rooms within 30 miles. Those are 90% occupied the week of the players, busiest week of the year. 685,000 passengers fly through Jacksonville International Airport. That's their busiest week of the year. So, really a total 360-degree impact here on Northeast Florida is certainly the second item that we focus on. And then lastly, is
the philanthropic part, right?
Our community service engine. What better way? We like to say simply that every taco, ticket, and T-shirt that gets purchased allows those proceeds to fall to the bottom line, and allow us to turn that around and really help organizations in need. And whether those organizations here in Northeast Florida are the Jacksonville Humane Society, a great partner of ours, our education system, our great medical system that's here in Northeast Florida, the opportunity to turn those things around and partner with those organizations is really what makes us proud.
And if you weren't aware, the Fan Shop, that's actually open this weekend ahead of the tournament beginning this coming week. I'm excited to hear about a cutting-edge AI course setup tool that they're going to use at the Players. Plus, there's an innovative app that lets fans predict golf shots. You can hear my entire conversation with Lee Smith on This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition. It's available right now, and you can find new episodes every Thursday at 9 a.m. You'll find it right now on News4Jax Plus under the channel This Week in Jacksonville. You'll also find This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition available wherever you find your podcasts, like Apple, Spotify, or Google. President Donald Trump made his first speech to a joint session of Congress in his second term. He entertained supporters and enraged his opponents. We're going to analyze the first almost 50 days in the new Trump administration. Stay with us for more on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
News for Jack's political analyst Rick Mullaney joins us now. Shercliffe, Executive Director of the Public Policy Institute at Jacksonville University. Rick, President Trump, he campaigned on some specific issues, and he said day one we're going to do A, B, and C, that he would attack them. He just spoke this week, Tuesday night, spoke to Congress and described in great detail how he believes he has gone about trying to fulfill those promises.
Well, he did, Kent. And in this speech, by the way, this was directed at kind of half the people in the room and sort of half the people in the country. But remember, in fulfilling those promises, he has some bipartisan support on much of what he's doing. For example, immigration, in which there has been some success. And this is, if there's any one signature issue for Donald Trump, it has been immigration, and he has had success there. He has bipartisan support, I believe, on energy and on social issues. And he talked about this again, and he leaned into it, of course, transgender athletes and men playing in women's sports. He's got support there. But there are other issues that came up in the address for which the jury is still out, or else there's opposition. That includes tariffs. That includes foreign policy. That includes cuts to the federal workforce. So for Donald Trump, this was vintage Donald Trump in style and content. He took a bit of a victory lap. He said the first 43 days.
It took about an hour and a half to do it, as a matter of fact. An hour, 20 minutes, is that right?
About 100 minutes, an hour and 40, the longest in history, but no one noticed.
Sure.
But for him, very modest statement of these are the best first 43 days of any president in the history of the country, other than maybe George Washington. But when you did get to the speech, very much campaign style, he talked about his greatest themes from the campaign. And so for Donald Trump and his supporters, big night. For his opponents, they're still opposed, but that's people in the middle. And like I said before, he enjoys some bipartisan support on some of his issues and really some opposition on others.
And as we continue watching some of this from Tuesday night, what's the impact of the speech? Because I've heard some varying descriptions of, as you just pointed out, who he was talking to, who he was trying to connect with.
Kent, in the end, I'm not a believer that State of the Union addresses or addresses to joint sessions of Congress really move the needle that much. It is an opportunity for a big audience. The people in the room, of course, have already made up their mind, but so is the bigger viewing audience. What may be of significance are a couple topics, some takeaways from the speech. One is tariffs, in which some people were expecting him to maybe soften it up a little bit because he's getting a lot of criticism. Instead, in that speech, he doubled down on tariffs for Canada, for Mexico, for the reciprocal tariffs that are going into effect on April 2nd. And the other is the war in Ukraine, in which he read a letter from Zelensky which suggests that maybe the door is cracked there. So if you're looking for big public policy issues that may affect the future, one is the economy and tariffs, the other is foreign policy in particular. And if you want a third, it is that federal workforce in which most people agree with the notion of government efficiency and going after waste, fraud, and abuse. It's how you go about implementing it. Those are some of the big ones.
And let's definitely dive into those in a moment. I did want to point out, most of the people who watched President Donald Trump's speech Tuesday night were pleased with his performance. So why do we say that? Well, there was a poll. CNN conducted a poll, or SSRS conducted it, said 69% said they had a somewhat positive reaction. 44% said they felt very positive. But important to note, most of those people who responded and said, yeah, we watched, Republicans. So this is back to the point of he was speaking to half of the people in the country, or half of the people in the room, his supporters.
He was. And remember this from the speeches of President Obama and President Biden. When they would have those speeches, they would have similar results because the people watching those speeches in general tend to be those supporters. But this speech in particular, unlike his speech from 2017, 8 years ago, his first speech was a speech designed to bring about a little bit more unity. This was more of a base speech. And this is a very different Donald Trump and a very different administration. No one should confuse the Donald Trump of 2025 and his administration with 2017. You take a look at those nearly 80 executive orders. It's the most in modern history, really, by far. The next highest is Joe Biden at 34. Wide-ranging immigration, energy, tariffs, DEI, federal workforce, the list goes on. And so for Donald Trump, he was trying to reinforce those messages, really talking more to his base than a broader audience.
Well, and I wanted to point out, you're bringing up tariffs and the DOGE efforts there on government efficiency, that there would be job cuts in the federal government and the workforce and whatever. But we're also looking at the economy, because the economy, you look at the markets, and they're on a bit of a roller coaster ride. The uncertainty, I think, is what investors are reacting to.
Kent, this is a really, really big topic. And I like to point to this statistic. Over the last half century, there have been 3 one-term presidents that sought a second term that didn't get it. Jimmy Carter, George Bush, Joe Biden. And in every one of those cases, it was the economy. For Donald Trump right now, he's in a bit of a honeymoon period. And for a while, this is the Biden economy. But before long, it'll be the Trump economy. And one of those challenges for him is inflation, which does appear to be on the rise. And the other is what happens next with this economy. With some people concerned, you're watching these bond yields in the market. You're seeing the markets being up and down, the wild card of tariffs. So for President Trump, he does have some leeway here, but before long, he will own this. And whether it was Joe Biden's fault or not, or Donald Trump's fault or not, if it goes poorly, you're accountable. If it goes well, you'll claim the credit. Remember, for Joe Biden, he had a honeymoon period until the summer of his first term. And then with Afghanistan and inflation, he never really recovered. For Donald Trump, he's in a period where he's got some support, but this economy is really, really important, and it's focused on prices because people feel it. And in the Democratic response, which was really pretty well done, the focus was, in particular, the economy and prices. So for Donald Trump, he knows that the clock is ticking on that.
All right. Clock was ticking on our segment. We're going to save a little bit of the clock, and we'll have more for our next segment. But Rick is going to stay with us. You know, it seems that there's going to be a significant impact in Jacksonville from the efforts of DOGE. The federal building on the chopping block and recommended to be sold. We'll talk about that next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
And thanks for staying with us today as we talk about national, state, and local politics with Rick Mullaney. And so we've got a bunch to get to, so we'll be a little briefer here. But I wanted to talk about the fate of one of Jacksonville's most recognizable federal buildings. It's kind of uncertain right now. Federal government announced this week that they intend to sell the Charles E. Bennett Federal Building. General Services Administration labeled it as one of more than 400 buildings across the country that aren't essential to government operations. The building you're looking at here at 400 West Bay Street downtown houses the IRS Taxpayer Assistance Center, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, Department of Labor office. Tuesday, it was listed as a building to be sold. The same list, though, pulled just a few hours offline. We are going to see local impacts from what happens on the federal front with this Department of Government Efficiency, right?
Clearly a local impact. And if you're mayor of the city of Jacksonville, you're concerned about downtown, and you're concerned about those big buildings, and you're concerned about that workforce downtown. So that's one issue, is the workforce and people being downtown. There's a second for the community itself, which is services, wanting to make sure that it's for doing it the right way for the right reasons. Because you remember, you have so many government, whether it's the IRS or whatever the groups are, in that building, a very big building that's been around, I think, since for decades, actually. Yeah. And then the other piece of this, and this goes back to something in the first segment, there is broad public support, I believe, for government efficiency. There is broad public support for cutting the federal workforce and the budget, $36 trillion budget, and there's support, I think, for reducing the workforce too. The challenge is in the execution and in the implementation. Are you letting go? Are you reducing the workforce in the right way with the right people? And when it comes to buildings, are you identifying the right buildings, and are you doing it in the right way? So for the federal government, this is one piece of something that's happening throughout the country. So for local governments around the country, like here in Jacksonville, it may present an opportunity in one way for others to be moving into that building, but in the near term, it's also an issue for downtown and for services to your community.
Well, I'm jumping around a little bit here, and nothing is set in stone, but this week, Jacksonville City Councilman Ron Salem says that he's going to hold a meeting this coming week and wants to talk more about what he's calling Duval Doge. Says the goal behind this is to address city deficits, but this is something that people are latching on to, whether federal, state, or local governments.
Ken, absolutely so, and it reinforces the point I was making a moment ago that I do think there's broad public support. If DOGE is synonymous with efficiency, if DOGE is synonymous with cost cutting that's effective, then you're going to see you're seeing that model copied. You're seeing that in Tallahassee with the governor. Right. You're seeing it here locally, but again, it's the execution. Now, the city council president has mentioned that this is going to be done a little bit differently. This is going to be with local officials. He also said, by the way, that in looking at the budget, and there's reasons to be looking at the budget because there's concerns over a shortfall coming up, that public safety comes off the table. Well, remember, of our nearly $2 billion budget, about $1.92 billion, just over $1 billion of that is public safety, so half of it's off the table right to begin with. But the notion of shining a spotlight, of being more efficient, of wanting to make sure that taxpayers' dollars are going where they're going, And given this shortfall that's being anticipated, you can expect that we will not be alone in this. We're not alone in this. You're seeing it in Tallahassee, you're seeing it here, you're going to see it around the country, this whole notion of spending and government efficiency.
I want to go back to one of the federal topics, and that was, you mentioned President Trump in his speech last Tuesday talked about, he read a letter from the president of Ukraine. It seems like, as you pointed, maybe the door is open to repair the relationship, or at least get back on a place where they're not insulting each other like we're seeing in this video from the Oval Office a week or so ago. What do we anticipate happening there?
A couple comments, Kent. First of all, this is a really, really significant topic. The first part of it is actually the smaller piece, which is the door now cracked to a potential deal with Ukraine? That's important, maybe a minerals deal or something else. But there's even a second piece, and I believe this is the more fundamental piece. Has there been this fundamental shift in foreign policy for the United States? One in which you expect to not only go it alone ourselves, but for other countries to go it alone. And what does that mean for our foreign policy? What does it mean for the potential expansion of Russia territorially and their influence in Europe? What does it mean for China and their potential expansion of territory and influence in Asia? Is it going to be three spheres of influence in which Donald Trump talks about Panama and Greenland and the 51st state in Canada, as he likes to talk about, and Russia and Europe and China and Asia, or not? What does it mean for NATO? They appear to be on life support at the moment, and some strained relationships with Canada, with Mexico, with Europe, with Ukraine. So apart from looking at the deal itself, which is critically important, there's an even larger issue on U.S. foreign policy and a fundamental shift that could have really significant consequences in the years ahead.
Yeah, certainly something we're watching intently. There's something interesting about it when you see people from Florida, like Michael Waltz, the National Security Advisor, and the Secretary of State is from Florida. But whoever is speaking, we're listening intently. Listening to Rick Mullaney as we do political analysis here on the show. Thank you so much, Rick, for your time.
Thank you, Ken. Good to be with you.
And thank you so much for being with us. Thanks for watching On Air on Channel 4. You can see us, of course, on the CW17 and online at news4jax.com.
See why every day more people are choosing News 4 Jax, Northeast Florida and South Georgia's #1 source for local news.